questions on that. Shil Verma ji, please. Over to you.
Kaushal Saab, all the office bearers, and my dear friend Sandeep, and my three dear friends Puneet, Vineet, and Rajesh Jain, and all the advocates, chartered accountants, and other professionals who are watching this particular webinar. I welcome you all, and I always believe knowledge is power. We share the knowledge. These are webinars, and whatever we speak are our opinions. They are not the conclusions by any stretch of imagination. So whatever judgments we quote, they are again according to our interpretation. Now, when we talk of input tax credit, like in all indirect taxes in recent decades, GST is also a value-added tax. So whatever value you add, you pay tax on that, and whatever tax was charged on the purchases, on your purchases by the supplier, and you paid for it within particular time, you get credit for it. So remember, GST is a value addition tax, and it has a huge philosophy as initiated by former Chief Justice Kapadia in associated leasing case. So what is the GST policy? Similarly, where all our judgments we have, like VKS Footsteps or recent Bombay judgments or Dharmendra Amjan or other judgments who have followed the GST policy. Okay, how can you restrict input tax credit? How can you not give? I have my friend Puneet, who has challenged section 17, 16.2 in various high courts by way of writs. Myself and Rajesh have filed writs here and there. Vineet has done, and Sandeep has done many, because he has a lot of work. And notwithstanding the notices issued by the high courts, I think in one of our case in SCW Infrastructure versus State of Telangana, on the interpretation of section 16.2 read with 16.4, the Telangana High Court even stayed the show cause notice and gave the date on July 22. They said you cannot do it. So again, these are interpretations and initial orders by the high courts. When we deal with input tax credit, you should remember it's a check drawn on you by the supplier and drawn by you on your recipient on behalf of the government. And if this check has to be honored, it is subject to certain conditions. It should be current dated, it should be within 3 months issues, should be signed by you, you should have money in the bank, all kind of conditions are put up. So tax invoice is as good as a check, because if I have a tax invoice of 10 lakh and 2 lakh is the GST charge on that amount, this money I am entitled as per section 16 to adjust against my output tax liability. So whenever you issue invoices or whenever we receive invoices, it is extremely critical we take this as a check, and we should exercise all precautions. You know, I remember a Delhi High Court ruling in the case of Prince Plastics, where the DB said if you deal with man of stray, like the issue I have in hand, me and Puneet on circular trading, then you must suffer the consequences. So whenever, as lawyers, as professionals, as chartered accountants or CFOs of financial companies, if you are getting into this tax invoice business, be careful. What you issue is correct, what you receive is perfectly law. Now, input tax credit has many facets. The entire GST is based on input tax credit. There is no other dispute here. But the main provision is section 16. 16.1 gives you the guidelines under what circumstances can you get the credit. And 16.2 is the most important section. It starts with a non-obstinate clause, notwithstanding anything contained in this section. Now, normally these kind of non-obstinate clauses, they start at the beginning of a section, but here in this particular act, you have in the middle of the section, section 2. Now, section 2 is the only section dealing with input tax credit. We start with the non-obstinate clause of 16.2. If you go to 73, 74, those provisions are not beginning with notwithstanding. Similarly, section 132, arrest. It says whosoever. Now, all these words will matter when we interpret the law in various courts or whatever opinions we guys give. So, notwithstanding, if you satisfy those 5 conditions, you are eligible to take credit. Now, similarly, in input tax credit, 4 or 5 kinds of words have been used. For example, entitlement, taking credit, availment, utilization. And 16.4 says, no credit shall be taken. These kind of negative clauses also have been used. And all these are linked with section 122, dealing with offenses, and Section 132 dealing with arrest and prosecution. Now, all these sections we need to understand the interplay of the section. Okay, where do we stand? Once we have a dispute, I was hearing the initial informal conversation. People were saying that these orders have been passed, these orders have been passed. Revenue authorities will pass any kind of an order. We need not get scared on this issue if some order has been passed. We have to find out a solution. And there are young lawyers like Puneet and Rajesh who can take up your calls anywhere in the country. I'm an old person, so I cannot travel much nowadays. Sandeep is there. So we can all take help from them, and I'm sure they'll be doing pro bono if you want an opinion, because between lawyers' opinions, we don't charge. At least this is what I follow. Now, the input as credit, there are 3-4 questions raised, especially Section 17, its interplay with Section 16, and Rule 37 and Rule 42 and 43. They are very critical because these kind of provisions existed in Rule 6 in the SANMAT rules also, where you will be entitled to the credit if you make a taxable supply, and you will not be entitled to a credit if you make an exempt supply unless it was zero rated, like in GST Act. Zero rated concept has been used in GST Act first time, and this is by way of a definition in Section 16 in the provision itself. There is no definition in Section 2. So the interplay of these provisions should be clearly understood, and it will be our endeavor, whatever little we know, because it's a new law, 4 years, not many judgments have come. So this is what we keep learning from webinars, we keep sharing knowledge, we keep writing articles, we keep learning more, but they're all in past regime. The other question is, majority of people ask us, will the pre-GST regime judgments will be applicable? Well, I will say yes or no. But where the Supreme Court or a jurisdictional high court or any other high court had interpreted a paramateria provision, what we have in GST, then keeping the scheme is value-added tax. And if you're dealing with indirect tax, scheme is value-added tax. So scheme, there should be no problem. Then I think those judgments will have a lot of weightage. But to say that they'll be straightaway applicable, like Arise India or Gerumal, at least I'm not of a view that they are straightaway applicable. But yes, those judgments give us a lot of learning how to go about it. Other issues, input as credit, which revenue keeps raising, is bogus purchases. Now, this bogus purchase, what is not defined? In fact, not even purchase is defined. It's a receipt. Now, bogus purchases, I'm not an expert in Income Tax Act, but I have read for this webinar and many articles on Section 68, 69, Income Tax Act dealing with bogus purchases. And I'll quote a recent High Court judgment of Bombay High Court. Now, if those bogus purchases are audited and accepted in Wall balance sheet without addition or without addition to the taxable income, then can we say the same balance sheet will not be accepted in GST regime? Now, these are again legal propositions we will all discuss in courts of law. But it's very difficult to assume the authorities will interpret an audited balance sheet by a certified chartered accountant or a cost accountant or whoever is able to audit. They say, no, income tax के लिए ठीक है, हम GST में नहीं मानते इसको, तो ये आपके purchase bogus है. So if based on those purchases, if I made sales, receipt payments, declared in my income tax returns, paid GST Income Tax Act, then will all this go for a 6? So that is why in most of these Section 68, 69 judgments, including Supreme Court and various high courts, have clearly held, okay, if the revenue needs to level this allegation, onus is upon them to prove that this is a bogus purchase. No, what are authorities saying? वो दुकान बंद थी, वो दुकान कभी खुली नहीं थी, वो बंदे available नहीं है. Well, this is all bakwas according to me. This is complete nonsense. Because in today's technological world, you don't need a shop to do business. I can do it in e-commerce. And if I'm a supplier, the definition of supplier in the GST Act includes supply through agent. Sitting in Bombay, I can tell my agent and tell you, please supply. I don't even get an e-way bill then. So this entire advent of technology will also make a major difference once we start arguing these judgments in courts of law. I recently did in Telangana High Court where we had this point, and the bench headed by Justice M.G. Rao accepted it. They questioned the government, are you denying this? You adopt e-commerce, you adopt ODIR facilities and you say, no, the physical movement, the physical receipt of goods, why can't be it on email? Now, yes, but the 16(2) conditions are very onerous conditions because they are with a non-obstinate clause, notwithstanding anything contained in this section, not in the act. So, clause section 16, if you want to claim input tax credit, you must satisfy the condition. But if you go to section 2, opening words, unless the context otherwise provides, that is a very major phrase in all tax statutes or all acts, in fact, whatever act we read. So unless the particular context of a particular provision has to be read differently, the definition in section 2 will prevail. And surprisingly, Sandeep, there is no definition of tax or tax paid in the 160 definitions we have in section 2. There is no definition. I remember in Delhi Sales Tax Act, Delhi VAT, we had the definition. So when 16(2) says tax must have been actually paid by the supplier. So what tax? Tax charged by him on GST, that's input tax credit. So all these issues, we are going to deliberate in a big way. And you have two very young lawyers, Vineet and Puneet. I am a big fan of both of them, though I have not interacted much with Puneet in my professional career, but I met him in Tribunal Chandigarh many times. They are two fantastic lawyers we have, and with a seasoned campaigner like Sandeep and Rajesh Jain and other seniors in the webinar, I'm sure we are going to have a fantastic discussion. But again, remember, whatever we speak, this is our understanding, our interpretation. Whatever judgment is quoted, we are trying to call out the ratio of the judgment and tell you. We are not going to say that these judgments are straight away applicable. So with these remarks, opening remarks, Sandeep, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Back to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for giving us this introduction with regard to ITC. I know it's a very, very big issue and is a major topic in the GST evolution. We cannot cover that maybe in few webinars put together. But anyways, we have you with us. We have so many other prominent lawyers, so we'll take benefit of that. I'll straightway go to the first question, which has been given to me by our Vardhi Shri Balkrishan Gupta ji, who is the president of Punjab Tax Bar Association, that pertains to the circular trading. As we all know about the circular trading, this is a trading which is done between the sister concern or closely connected firms belonging to the same person or the same family. Now the question arises is, provisions of section 122(1) subclause 2 prescribe penalty for the offense of issuance of any invoice or bill without supply of goods or services or both in violation of the provisions of this act or rules made thereunder. And section 132(1)(b) is also on the similar line. The basic purpose of these provisions is not to allow the input tax credit for availment or utilization of refund of tax. So idea is that the input tax credit should not be used in a manner, should not be availed in a manner so that you are trying to offset your liability with the genuine liability. But in the case of circular trading, the transactions have all been reported. The due tax, when the initially it starts from the first purchase, the tax stands paid to the government. On every value addition, the tax is paid to the government, and eventually when the goods are sold, that time also the tax is paid on that. So question arises, people committing any kind of violation, if and that violation is there, how serious this violation is, and what are the consequences of that? Is the department correct in bringing circular trading also within the ambit of section 132(1)(b) and section 122(1)(2)(i)? So please deliberate upon that. I'll switch to the other panelists also on this question. Sir.
Are you telling me to start?
That's right, sir.
Yeah. Now, friends, this is the foremost question where arrests are taking place today in the country. There is no other violation being reported. There's a marked difference between section 122 and 132. 120 deals with 6-7 kind of offenses and penalties thereon. But section 132 is a coercive provision that takes away your liberty, that puts you in jail. So coercive provisions have to be interpreted very strictly. There cannot be a liberal interpretation of a coercive provision like section 132. Now, the circular trading is not defined. It's basically a concept from stock market, where few people start buying shares which are not in supply, and they jack up the price to make more profits. Now, in tax regime also, because all banks give loans linked with your turnover, as is in the question, so people start inflating turnover. If it was that simple, then I don't think we need arrest for it. It has been going on for thousands of years all over the world. It happens. The other concept which Sandeep has raised very rightly is shell companies. The shell companies is a menace. That is why the circular trading is made a crime when you start dealing with shell companies. Let me give you one example. There is a company called ABC Infrastructure Limited. It has 7 main companies who have various kind of infra projects going on. And it had 10 more companies created by the group in various names, not by the same promoter directors, by employees, by clerks, by managers. Now, all those 7 main companies give the contract to ABC Infrastructure Limited. So they have a contract book of, let's say, 10,000 crores. They go to the bank, okay, look, we have a contract book of 10,000 crores loan. The money is given. Now, again, this 10,000 crore of contract are given back to those 12 shell companies to execute. Now, let us say each shell companies get a 1,000 crore contract. Now, these shell companies again go back to banks because they're independent companies and backed by, of course, the promoter companies. They say, we have 1,000 crore contracts, sir, we need 700 crore loan. So money is given to them. Now, these companies do nothing. So they act as a facilitator. They give it to the subcontractors who physically execute. Now, all these 7 companies, ABC Limited and these 10 shell companies, they have actually done no work. Those 7 companies are building an infrastructure project and back to back, they're giving the contract. Similarly, let's take a trading example. A sends a bill of 10 kilo silver with 1,80,000 GST to B. B gives to C, C gives to C, D gives to E, and E gives it back to A. Let us say value is same. There is no value addition. First example. This is a classic case of circular trading. All 6 people in the chain have inflated their balance sheet to borrow the money from banks and maybe tomorrow run with the money. And no taxes paid to the government. Let's have a second variant of circular trading, where A has 1 kilo silver. He doesn't sell all 1 kilo. He sells 8 kilo, B to C 7.5 kilo, and then ultimately from E to A, it is 6 kilo. This is second type of trading. And let us say in this second variant, all are selling to each other with a 5% margin. Now, 5% margin, GST is being paid because they are entitled to input tax credit based on Section 62, and I presume those conditions are satisfied. This is another way of circular trading. Now, in the first part, I have a problem. In this particular second part, which is the question, in the part of the question, where there is a value addition tax is paid and all goods are not being transferred. So A sold the goods are back to A. Maybe he sold 100, he has 80 back. Now, supposing his total turnover is 1,000. So what is the circular trading percentage? 0.08%. Can I say he's a bogus dealer? The answer has to be no. No court will say he's a bogus dealer. It's not possible. But where these kind of inner circle who are maintaining a kind of a conspirational group, let's do it, which is being done. When they start doing it without paying tax, and without physically supplying the goods are lying with A. Goods are not going anywhere. A to B, B to C, C to D, tax and vices are being following. That is why in 16.2, they put a condition, you must prove that goods have been physical or services have been physically received by you. And I'm sure all of us know Section 155. 155 says if you want to claim input tax credit, onus is upon you to prove you are entitled to input tax credit. Now that's again a major departure. We had this provision in Delhi VAT Act also. There was no provision like in Central Sales Tax Act. So once you have that kind of a provision, you have an issue. But I have a further issue with the circular trading. Now, circular trading, you are trying to deny input tax credit. So what is the concept of input tax credit in section 2? Input tax credit is that portion of tax which is charged on the tax invoice. The word is not paid, it's charged. Now, this definition, when it goes to section 16.2 conditions, this says the tax must have been paid by the supplier. Now, this is where the section 2 opening sentence comes, unless the context otherwise provides. So the tax charged on invoice gets converted to a tax actually paid by the supplier. Now, when you say tax actually paid by the supplier, no, it doesn't mean cash. The section 16 itself says he can pay in cash if he doesn't have a credit in electronic credit ledger, or he can adjust it. Now, supposing this guy, we're talking about a particular person, he's dealing with many firms like this, and he has plenty of input tax credit, and he starts billing. Now, then when we see from this angle, this is not justified. This is doing violence to the provisions of Act, not paying your tax. Let us say bill trading, another form of circular trading. Now, what is bill trading? Again, this concept is not defined, and I'm sure many of us are not clear on this concept. I was also not very clear, but we had discussion. I have Rajesh, Dan, Vineet, Rakesh. We keep discussing this issue whenever we talk on phone. Now, supposing you go to a paint company, you buy a paint for 2 lakh rupees. Since you don't want to give check, you give cash and get the paint. He has charged you tax. He has not given you without tax, I guarantee you. Now he has just 2 lakh rupees tax in the tax paid purchase is available. He simply issues a bill to ABC Limited, takes money from them, takes a cut of GST share. This is called bill trading. Then there is a concept of fake invoices, where the first importer himself has never bought the item, but he is a registered taxpayer. He issues a bill, again without physically, he doesn't have the goods, and the bill trades. In all these kind of...
Verma sir, sorry for interrupting. Actually, we are now confining our discussion only to the aspect of circular trading.
Absolutely.
Where there is no fake bill trading or nothing of that sort. We are not talking about that.
Absolutely. We are coming on this only. Just wanted to add this word.
We are saying that where the actual goods, maybe physical delivery has not taken place, but there is no fake invoicing, etc.
Absolutely.
Are registered and everything is there. Okay. So that's a kind of where the not bills trading. I would say that everything has been recorded in the department and tax is being paid. So we are talking about insofar as formalities are concerned, these are complete in all respects.
Okay, I'm coming on that. Now the question says that where first supplier has paid the tax, other in the chain and we should bill, and the allegation is that there is no physical supply of goods. Now, the section 16.2 talks of where supplier has paid tax. What department does, they do an extended chain verification of these matters. So A may have paid the tax, has not physically supplied the goods. Now it is not it's not the only payment of tax. 16.2 conditions have to be satisfied concurrently, all together. You cannot satisfy one and get away with it. And especially the 16.2 talks of the word supplier, not suppliers. So when the legislature use the word supplier, it's a singular word. So we cannot say my contractual privity of the recipient is with the immediate supplier. Whether immediate supplier has satisfied section 16.2, that is, he has paid the tax or not, he must have paid the tax. 16.2 is also relevant for him. So my dispute with department is transaction between A and immediate supplier B, you can verify. But if you start going to B to C, C to D, D to A, then you have problems. Then we'll have a lot of problems. So therefore, in circular trading per se, in 16.2, where we are able to substantiate if the first tax was paid, and on value addition also tax was paid, but we are unable to prove that goods were physically received or moved by the ultimate person who has been charged with an offense, then I think ex facie 16.2 provisions are violated. That is section 132.1 subclause B, and the circular trading per se, we will have to fight it out. But if you go to pre-GST regime, there are a lot of judgments that say even if supplier has not paid the tax, as you are satisfying the 16.2 conditions, that is tax invoice, etc., Arise India, Kerumal, LGW, there are a number of judgments on the issue, more than 12. on this particular issue, then the tax credit cannot be denied. But those acts did not have the 6 conditions like Section 16 has, except Delhi VAT, where 92G was interpreted by a rise case in Delhi High Court, and Supreme Court dismissed the SLP not by really a speaking order, but by 4-line order. So we say that Delhi High Court judgment is as good as valid. But in the scheme of GST, which is pan-India, not a local GST scheme, we still have to examine whether these kind of transactions where tax is paid, the physical delivery is not proved. In my view, ITC will not be given to you. Because especially the courts in recent times, they are going into GST philosophy. They say that GST is a philosophy, legislature thought fit to create such law. So unless we challenge this provision, that is why in the Section 132 challenge of jurisdiction, Supreme Court in Damandra Davanti case, they dismissed. They say go to High Court. Nobody has gone to High Court so far. So till this provision exists, and Section 16.2 is a not ventilation clause, I think 132 uses the word whosoever. Section 16.2 deals with registered taxpayer. So I think 132 will overpower 16.2 in this matter. So therefore, in my opinion, unless you prove physical delivery of a goods or receipt, simplicity recording of books of accounts. Now, the only way the physical delivery has been excused is when bill to ship to transaction, where constructive delivery has been recognized by legislature. So this is my initial views on 16.2, subject to what Puneet has to say.
I'll switch to other panelists on this issue. We are fortunate that all these lawyers have actually dealt with these like cases in Delhi High Court in Arise India and Conquest merchandising. Rajesh ji, please unmute yourself. I'm requesting that Verma ji has just told us about Section 16.2 compliance in the circular trading aspect. Is it necessary that the physical delivery has to take place? Now, suppose a person keeps the goods within, are kept in the seller's godown itself, and the supplies are made from there. Will the department not treat that transaction as sale in the normal course? So, will that principle not apply for the circular trading also?
Well, so far as if the goods are lying in the godown of the supplier, and the supplier is only acting as a bailee now.
That's right.
His title as an ownership has gone.
Yes.
He has issued the bill.
Yes.
The purchaser becomes the owner, but he is retaining the goods as a bailee.
That's right.
So it is the title of the buyer who can claim and who can say whether it is a constructive delivery or a physical delivery.
Yes.
The goods have been received. It is not material that the goods should come to you at your premises.
So physical movement is not necessary.
Yes, physical movement may not be necessary, but the whole thing is that you should be able to prove that you have a constructive delivery.
Yes.
That you have received the goods, though the goods may be lying in the godown of the supplier. Because otherwise, if it is not so, and it is only a facade which has been used for a circular trading,
yes,
and on the basis of circular trading, people take on or availing the credit, because the availment or utilization of the credit is one thing, which is the subject matter of Section 73 or 74. It's not simply taking credit in the records. Availment of credit is the issue, and that is normal availment, which is wrongful, would be covered under 73. And if it is fraudulently taken or something has been concealed, then Section 74 would come into picture. So this thing would have to be kept in mind. If that is the situation, then possibly Verma ji is right that you will not be entitled to the input of credit because you would not be satisfying the conditions of 16.2. Otherwise, yes, if you have the constructive delivery, you are entitled.
Bhatia ji, I'll switch to you now. Is it not a situation where the conditions of Section 16.2 have to be read in the context of the entire situation being the revenue neutral? Where is the loss to the government in the entire situation? So the courts in the most of the judgments which we see, wherever there is a revenue neutral position, the courts always say that at least the element of mens rea has to be taken away from there. So how do you deal with that argument?
Sandeep ji, in this issue, there are two issues involved. A, the first part of the query was relating to Section 122 vis-a-vis 132. In my opinion, both these sections operate in entirely different domain. 122 deals with penalty relating to offenses, which is a monetary penalty, whereas 132 talks of punishment and prosecution as far as an offense is concerned. So
Right.
they operate in two independent domains. It is quite possible that for the same offense, penalty is also been prescribed and it has been made a non-bailable or a bailable offense also.
No doubt.
So let us not be confused that if an offense has been prescribed in 122, it cannot be simultaneously prescribed in 132. Let us be clear on this one aspect. That is one part. As far as the second part is concerned, the circular trading is concerned, I personally feel that if there is a case of constructive delivery, input tax credit cannot be denied to the entire chain merely because it is a case. It may be an offense under some other law. It may be an offense under a banking law. It may be a financial fraud. It may be an offense under some other law. But as far as GST is concerned, my liability under GST cannot be fastened only on the ground that how can I say that I have not complied with 16.2? Once there is a case of constructive delivery, the supplier has issued an invoice to me. And after having issued the invoice, as Rajesh Jain ji had pointed out, the ownership shifts. And the law recognizes, the section 10 of the IGST Act recognizes the concept of constructive delivery very clearly in the statute itself. So in my opinion, and practically also, we have handled a case. Let me tell you, I handled a matter where the issue was, it was a bullion dealer. And they were doing a circular trading within their own firms. But what they did was, there was actually no physical movement of the goods, but constructively it was moved from one vault to another vault in the same premises. So if it was moving from one vault to another vault in the same premises, it was held, yes, it is a case of constructive delivery. Fortunately, it's not a reported thing because it got dropped at the initial stages itself. The officer agreed to this proposition and agreed that, yes, this is a case of constructive delivery, even if it is a case of circular trading. Secondly, important aspect you have raised, circular tradings are always revenue neutral. There is no revenue loss on the whatever value addition is being done by each member of the chain, maybe 5% or 1%, whatever value addition is being done, taxes are being discharged, liabilities being discharged on that value addition portion. So as long as there is a value addition, it is revenue neutral. The tax at the first instance has been paid to the government, and then on each value addition tax has been paid to the government. I don't see any reason, if a case is properly fought out, that input tax credit will not be allowed to everyone in the entire chain. Secondly, let us look at from the other perspective. Can the government charge input tax credit, deny input tax credit and charge taxes from everybody in the chain? That would amount to multiple taxation of a single transaction. Although in law that is permissible, I don't dispute that fact. But looking at it from revenue neutral perspective, I personally feel input tax credit should be allowed. That is my view.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Puneetji, I'll go to you now. Puneetji, you have been instrumental in getting those judgments from Delhi High Court regarding OnQuest and some other judgments also, which were almost dealing with the similar issue under the Delhi VAT Act. Just added to that, we have seen another view which is coming from Bhatia ji, that in such cases, the courts are likely to grant the benefit of ITC to people.
One thing, Sandeep ji, I would like to point out that 92G, the provision in the DVAT Act, to which we all were parties, Rajesh Jain ji was also there, I was also there.
I know.
We have a similar provision like 16.2 is also under challenge in various high courts.
I know.
We are aware of it.
I
The
know.
provisions are absolutely pari materia.
Yes, of course.
But there, in those cases, the dispute is something else. There, the dispute is that the seller has not paid taxes.
Not paid the tax. Yes.
Here, that is not the issue in these cases. Circular trading matter.
I would say circular trading falls on a much better footing than those cases.
Yes, exactly.
So Puneetji, Puneetji has also touched that point. We have seen section 17, in which it has been provided 17.5, that section 70, in case the seller has paid the tax under section 74, then that credit would not be available. So one aspect I would request you to deal with is whether under section 16.2, if the tax has been paid to the government without delivery of goods or the so-called, physical movement has not taken place, the credit would not be available in the hands of purchaser one. And secondly, suppose the tax eventually stands paid under section 74. Can the government deny that credit? Can they say that buyer would not be entitled for that once the tax stands paid in the entire chain? So these two aspects I would request you to take up, please.
Sandeep ji, first of all, I thank the bar for inviting me amongst the galaxy of speakers. I thank you personally for giving me this opportunity, and to all the august members who are here, who have given me opportunity to enable me to share my views. And all these aspects have already been covered by my senior friends in the panel. I would like to say two things. You have raised one additional issue that I will respond to, but before that, I will say one thing, that why this issue of circular trading is actually arising is that nowadays there is a new culture which is arising in tax administration, which is reading the law with an angle of morality. I think tax laws and equity or morality are not, they can, of course, as a matter of discussion in parliament, yes, morality has to be discussed. In societal discourse, it has to be done. But when a business is doing an act which is within the four corners of the statutes, then to go behind the transaction and to find out some supposed intention of the businessman as to why he did it, and to then deny the benefit of a statutory provision is a new trend. It's like new boy on the this thing. So it's a completely new trend, and this trend is very, very dangerous. We all have to understand that if there is a provision of law, then if a person fulfills the provisions of the law, then he is entitled to whatever the law is saying. And if the parliament really wants to look through the transaction, it has to bring statutory provisions, which again would be in form of a deeming fiction. So now coming to and applying this to the situation of circular trading, I am assuming for that purpose that A has actually performed all that was required from him while selling the goods to B. B has done all that was required while he sold the goods to C. C to D, D to E, E to F, F to A back. So if the statutory provisions have been actually performed, thereafter to ask still to deny the credit, I think the scheme does not. The law doesn't say so. Now, whatever the officers want to do, they can. Of course, they have the right to pass assessment orders, even wrong assessment orders, they have the right to pass. But I don't see that morality should really enter into it. So that is the answer from my part from first angle, because tax and equity are strangers. Number two, now you asked me a question as to whether if the supplier pays tax under section 74, तो क्या buyer का credit deny हो सकता है? ये वही बात हो गई कि कोई seller ने माल बेचा, properly बेचा, सब कुछ properly किया, और जब आप घर पहुंचे तो आपके घर पुलिस आ गई ये बोल के कि उसने अपने टैक्स जमा नहीं करे तो आप जो सामान खरीद के लाए हैं इसकी हम कुर्की कर लेंगे. और ये भी एक नया ट्रेंड है, ऐसा हो रहा है. When a person is buying, selling, transacting with people who have some tainted history, हम लोग routinely देख रहे हैं enforcement directorate के cases में, tax के cases में, SEBI के cases में, attachment proceedings are being done even against the persons which are wholly illegal. So I think two things which the legislators have to understand, executive will never understand. It is like this, it will remain like this. Two things which we have to as a system in the tax system. We are also a part of the tax system as a bar. So we all have to understand two things. I think that tax laws have to function strictly in the manner in which the provisions have been established. If a person follows that, there is nothing called look through. And if the legislature want to have look through, they have to have statutory provisions. Number two, to cast liability on everyone because one mistakes, again, is a very, very extremely dangerous proposition. And that provision of section 17.5, which denies the credit, is extraneous to denial of credit. It is equivalent to the situation that you dealt with in Gerumal, or we all dealt with in Delhi High Court in Onquest. And I think if the law is well settled, it is the executive have to really, or even the legislature has to respect it. But then there are points of view. Ultimately, the courts have to settle these issues.
Thank you so much. Punitji, I am getting some questions in the chat which are connected to this issue. So I'll put it to our panelists. One is the question is, how can we prove the supplies in case of waste business in which the goods purchased from truck sellers, I should be truck sellers instead of GST sellers, and made sales with proper documentation with e-way bills? I think that will not be required for ITC. If we are not claiming ITC, the question of proving the delivery would not arise, because eventually then the tax would be required to be paid by the seller itself. There is a question from CA Jyotsna. She's saying that in cotton trade, new season starts in September, October. Cotton bales are traded in future, delivery at spot. No physical delivery, only circular billing. Transactions are 100% genuine. What will, whether it will be hit by section 16(2). Verma, can you just throw some light on this? This is a normal trade. This is a normal trade practice in cotton bales.
But I think these kind of trades are allowed, but only when they receive the cotton bills with tax invoice, they'll be entitled to ITC. Otherwise, simply on a सौदा settle करके तो ना ITC मिलेगा.
आपकी आवाज क्रैक हो रही है. Can you come again, please?
What I'm saying is कि अगर cotton bales को फ्यूचर में ट्रेड किया और वहाँ का सौदा सेटल कर दिया, उसके बेस पर ITC तो नहीं मिलेगा ना. Only when the सौदा materializes and the cotton bales come with tax invoice, ITC is available. There is no bar.
Any other views?
See, the only issue we have to see is, I've heard Vineet on bullion. Wall to what is a physical delivery? So when we say physical delivery, it doesn't talk of distance. It can be from one room to another room. It should be physical delivery. And what Puneet is saying makes sense, because that's what I made opening remarks. The courts are going on a very different tangent on morality, the scheme, the equity. Now, these are the new trends. Law is a very dynamic concept. Law is not a static concept where we stick to. If you remember, we were all part of the judgment of Chunilal Prashadilal Supreme Court. We had the C-form. There's you prove physical goods. In E1 sales, you prove the LR was endorsed. So the constructive delivery concept, in my view, is allowed only in those circumstances which are given by lawmakers in this statute. There cannot be presumption. The tax is levied or not levied according to what language is used. So what languages we are reading of Delhi VAT Act in Arise, including Supreme Court, or the Gerumal was a far better judgment than the Delhi High Court judgment, in my view. And we have a number of other judgments also on this issue. Those schemes were different. They were schemes which were state specific. But once you go to Central Act on E1 forms, the transit sales, we have series of Supreme Court judgments with differing view. Section 3 interpretation by Supreme Court, the goods must move. So if the goods don't move, interstate sale is not there. Chunilal Prashadilal. So I think I said it's an interpretation, but I will stick to view, except where constructive delivery is allowed under bill to ship to transactions. Constructive delivery from a godown, like Rajesh said, section 16(2) does not talk of a transfer of title. It's not a sale. Section 16(2) doesn't use the word of transfer of title at all. It says when shall you be entitled to take credit in your electronic credit ledger. So those title transfer cases are totally different. Here we are talking of a scheme of the act which gives you money. This has to be construed very strictly. I will agree with, to some extent, with Puneet. In tax laws, the bringing of morality, tax should be levied not according to conduct of the party, not according to my character, but tax according to law. Like in Bombay High Court gave bail to series of circular trading people in Sapna trading. This is not the case. The Supreme Court reversed it. All the arrests have happened on circular trading. Are we saying all these high courts did not understand section 16(2) and 132, 1 subclause B, right from PV Ramanna onwards? No, I think that would be too much to say that these high court didn't understand it, people put to jail. It's not a levy of tax liability. Chartered accountant, lawyers, professionals are jailed for 6, 7, 8, 9 months. Why? That the only ground of revenue was this, whether rightly or wrongly, and initial stage is no final conclusion. Supreme Court still has to give a delivery on this judgment. So I would still stick in 16(2) conditions have to be satisfied strictly. You want money back? Satisfied. So physical delivery of goods is a sign-on clause of this particular input tax credit mechanism. That is why it was made an offense in section 130. 122 is irrelevant. Like when he said that they are 6-7 kind of penalties, David there, they are on a totally different tangent. We are not dealing with the coercive provision. 120 is not a coercive provision. So,
Thank you.
so on this particular issue, I think we have to go back to where this physical delivery was mandatory, like in Central Sales Tax Act. Like in excise, there were many cases like this. So इसको थोड़ा भी और देखना पड़ेगा. But I agree with Puneet, the question of morality. Courts should not get into कि ये society कैसे चलेगी, देश कैसे चलेगा, ये देश parliament चलाएगा, हमने तो ना चलाना है. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll switch to the next question, and I'll go to again Sushil Verma ji.
नहीं, go to somebody else first, यार. थोड़ा
All right. I'll go to Jain Saab.
जान साहब को बोलो, आधा घंटा निकल जाएगा, बाकी पढ़ लेंगे जो हमने
I just wanted to add with respect to this supply of cotton is concerned.
Sir.
When we test it with the provision of section 16(2), the specific word with respect to goods or services which have been used is they have received. The recipient has received the goods or services. So each word which has been used is has received.
Yes.
We would have seen in number of cases where the duty is paid or duty is payable or is charged. Different expressions have been used. So if we take it in that tenor, that means the goods should have been received. Constructive delivery is one thing where the goods have come. Only thing is they are lying in the godown of the supplier. But here, goods have not been received.
Yes.
And if you see the proviso to section 16(2), where the goods are received in lots. So it says only when the last installment comes,
You will get ITC.
you will get the ITC, not before that.
Continued
And then you
supply.
have to see it in the situation of the requirement of making the payment within 180 days, the second proviso. So if a recipient does not make the payment within 180 days, he has to debit that credit. He has to, what credit he has availed, he is to make the, pay the tax. So what happens in this situation where the goods have not come, the goods will come in future. I do not know what about the payment status, whether that payment has been made or not. If that payment is also going to be made in the future, beyond 180 days, where is the availability of credit? So these aspects would have to be kept in mind, as what Puneet ji said right now, that it is the letter, it is what is laid down in the law that is more relevant.
Yes.
Equity and morality, they are strangers to tax laws. So we have to go by this provision. That's all.
Well, I think we have different views on the aspect. The question of receiving the goods itself is.
संदीप, इसको डिस्कस करने के लिए 4 दिन का वेबिनार चाहिए सेक्शन 16 को डिस्कस करने के लिए.
मैं तैयार हूं
4 दिन का चाहिए फुल डे.
सर, मैं तैयार हूं, आप टाइम निकालिए सर.
नहीं, ये जंगल लड़के बैठे हैं ना, विनीत और पुनीत, इनको लो ना बीच में. हम भी बीच में आ जाएंगे कभी-कभी.
But you are the boss, sir. सर, अभी वो 180 दिन वाली बात जैन साहब ने करी थी. So I am going to that question. This question is asked whether reversal of ITC in case of non-payment of consideration beyond 180 days is to be considered year-wise or not. If yes, whether there should be reversal in the years gone by where annual returns have already been filed and cases under audit by the department. And in such case, if it is reversed, how it will be reclaimed in the succeeding years when the consideration is actually paid. If not, whether only interest should be paid for wrong claim of ITC from the period ending 180 days to the date of payment under 180 for 180 days in such cases.
Sandeep, इसमें तो I'll give very briefly answer unless people want to elaborate it.
Right, sir.
It is from date of invoice 180 days, so year has no connection.
Actually,
It can be any year. It can happen in March. You'll have to reverse in April. So
yes.
इसका कोई issue नहीं है इसमें. Or in whichever year you make payment, because the section 16 itself mandates, but with rule 37, that जब भी आपका payment आएगा, you can reavail. It again doesn't refer to the year. So 16(4) limitation by end of next year September return is not applicable to 180 days. आप issue
कोई प्रॉब्लम आनी नहीं चाहिए उसमें 180 days के लिए.
I don't think it's a very big question where we should debate on this issue.
I think आपकी annual return ही 6 months के बाद फाइल होती है, so the question of 180 days not arise.
ये इतना बड़ा कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं है.
जी सर. Sir, one more thing. Jain Sahab, this is all again relating to ITC. In case of scrutiny of returns under section 66, this is again coming from Balkishan ji. Read with rule 99, the proper officer notices discrepancies and seeks explanation. Or in case of refund case under section 54, in order to avoid harassment and litigation gets the amount reversed by the supplier itself or by the supplier of his suppliers in the books of accounts through proper and applicable DRC 03. Will the taxable person under scrutiny or refund be able to get benefit of that reversed amount in his own case without payment of any interest or not? This means like the previous person has paid the tax. When you have your scrutiny is going on, what would be the effect of the payment made by your predecessor?
Well, in fact, the payment which has been made by the predecessor is not the payment made by you.
That's right.
So whether the 54 would apply to you to seek refund of that payment which has been made by predecessor, to my understanding, that may not apply, because that has not been made by you.
So, Jain Sahab, the question over here, I think, is that allegation against, say, for example, me was that I will not be allowed input tax credit because my supplier has not paid the taxes.
Yes.
Now my supplier has come forward and paid the taxes before issuance of any show cause notice.
Yes. Yes.
And
Absolutely.
so whether I will be entitled to ITC or not, I think that is the question.
You see, ITC, if we see it on exactly what we have been discussing with respect to 16.2.
Absolutely.
That payment is made by the supplier. In any case, he is liable to make the payment. But once he issues the invoice to you, which is a tax invoice, you have received the goods and the tax has been charged by him, and you have made the payment. But he had made the payment subsequently, and you have fulfilled all the conditions of 16.2. Even the payment which is asked by proviso, second proviso to 16.2 has been fulfilled. How can you be denied the credit? The question would be this. You cannot be denied the credit merely because that payment has been made at a later stage by the supplier. Obligation on you is, now then again this question comes with respect to Onquest merchandising or Gherulal case as to what can be vouched by the recipient. He can only vouch for the transaction which he has entered into. He can show the invoices, he can show that the goods have been received or the services have been supplied to him. But what beyond he can do? And in fact, when there is no collusion, there is no fraud, there is no angle of concealment on any other part, to my understanding, under such situation, input tax credit cannot be denied to him. And of course, as the trade practice goes on, he would have definitely availed the input tax credit by the time this comes to the notice. So whether that tax credit can be denied, which he has availed either under section 73 or 74, he can definitely answer that question when the show cause comes to him. That cannot be demanded. But so far as the refund is concerned, to my understanding, he would not be entitled to refund because he has already taken the credit.
Verma ji, your views on this?
Yeah, see what is the function of DRC 03? It's a voluntary payment made on shortfall received. And this can be used for audit, reconciliation, investigation, annual return mismatches, demand, section 374. But if you read section 31, you must have tax invoice. So if in your case, you are told, okay, this supplier has not paid the tax. If I understand the question correctly, because question mein thoda kahin problem hai English mein, maybe we are not able to appreciate this question better.
Of course.
We are saying that Mr. A's case is taken in scrutiny under section 66. ठीक है, उसका 54 का रिफंड है. और ये बहुत सारे केस हो रहे हैं, चाहे वो सेक्शन 17(2)(3) के रिलेटेड हो, यहाँ जेल में हजारों केस चल रहे हैं ऐसे.
सर रिफंड बिना रिफंड के भी हो सकता है.
हाँ, यस. let's take up both the cases.
Yes.
अब उसमें कहते हैं जी आपने रिफंड क्लेम किया है, संदीप गोल ने जो आपको सप्लाई की है, इसकी हमें पेमेंट नहीं आई. ठीक है, अब हम कहते हैं जी कि ये पेमेंट, यू टॉक टू सप्लायर, ही सेज ओके मैं पेमेंट कर रहा हूं. Right? Now, if you ask me in equity, you are entitled. But the limitation in section 16(2) will hit you. वो कहां से लेके आएंगे? अगर वहां टैक्स इनवॉइस भी नहीं है आपके पास और वो सप्लायर को पेमेंट करता है क्योंकि उसे नंबर दोगे आपको सप्लाई की थी, उसमें तो रिफंड क्लेम कर नहीं सकते थे आप. आपने नंबर दोगे सप्लाई क्लेम की थी और उसका आप पकड़े गए, अब वो टैक्स पेमेंट करता है, तो आईटीसी का मतलब ही नहीं है वहां पर, नॉट इवन इन इक्विटी. नाउ Yes.
I think, sir, I think the question has been framed in a manner where formalities are completed, the goods have come. It's only that the seller has not paid the tax. Gupta ji हमारे साथ हैं. Gupta ji, can you just clarify this, please? Gupta ji हमारे साथ में है. He is the one who has asked this question. Sir. Gupta, you can speak, sir. Sir, please go ahead.
My voice is coming.
Yes. Please.
The basic question is, once the payment is to be made to the government, at what stage that payment has been made, that is the issue involved. If that payment is made at later stage by the supplier or supplier of his suppliers, it means the government has received that money. So ITC should not be denied to the dealer who's under scrutiny under section 66 or refund case in 54. So I am of the opinion that if the payment is made, might be at a later stage, the department can at the most demand interest from that person who is making the payment late. I have made the payment to him in time, and all the conditions of section 16(2), those stand fulfilled.
Yes.
So there should not be any denial, according to me.
Okay, now I understand the question. Now, Sandeep, my view is the ITC is a concession. It is not your vested right. Notwithstanding various Supreme Court judgments of the contrary, we have examined all these judgments. This right is subject to certain conditions. Like in Mafatlal, they said if a refund is time barred, you cannot claim. So similarly, if this payment is beyond the provisions of section 16,
my application for refund is not time barred. It is in time, and my scrutiny has also not gone beyond the period of law. The things are that simply the question of allowing ITC to that person.
Yes, sir, I agree. But the 54, you will claim refund of unutilized ITC. I mean, if it's available as per 54(1) or 54(3). वो ITC आपको मिल ही नहीं सकता था. So this payment made late will relate back to your claim. That claim will be unlawful. In my view, wrongful.
So it
High Court
means
में मिल सकते हैं, नीचे वाला तो आपको इसको relief नहीं देंगे.
That is the issue. The main thing is that I was not entitled as of date of application.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But today, since the payment has been made, so I become entitled for that.
No, sir, you will not become entitled because the payment has been made within time of section 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then in such circumstances, it is better to get the refund deducted instead of asking him to make the payment.
Exactly. It will be equally.
That will be a better option.
You can get away with this, but tomorrow when we will be caught here also.
But so far as the claim of ITC in security case under section 66 is concerned, of course, in that case, it cannot be denied.
Rajesh, what is your view?
Sandeep ji, may I add something?
Sir, please go ahead, sir. Go ahead. Panel is open.
Sir, I think in this case, the issue is simple. Somebody made supplies to him and he availed ITC. He is in possession of tax invoice. He has made the payment to his supplier and he has claimed the ITC within the limitation period prescribed under section 16(4). Now, on the basis of that unutilized ITC, he has applied for refund. When it comes to giving of refund, the assessing officer says that, look, you have claimed this ITC, but the supplier has not paid the taxes.
Absolutely.
At that given point of time, the supplier is confronted and he agrees that yes, he has not paid the taxes and he is willing to make the payment of the taxes and he pays the taxes.
That's right.
In my opinion, this person would be entitled to the input tax credit because his input tax credit originally claimed even if the supplier would not have had made the payment. Assuming for a minute that the supplier actually does not come forward and make the payment, then I'll have to take reliance upon all these judgments. That how can I be my bona fide input tax credit be denied unless until the connivance is proved between supplier and me. So that will come into play. But now this is a step further where the supplier has come forward and paid the taxes also. And this taxes has not been paid pursuant to a section 74 notice. So as long as it has not been paid pursuant to section 74, he would be very well entitled to claim his ITC. And I don't think so that his refund can be rejected or his refund can be denied on this ground. More particularly when the supplier, the allegation which was there originally no longer stands. That is my view.
Sir,
Secondly,
Sir, sir.
the third provision, which is
This can be tested from this point of
16
view.
to
also.
double A. 16 to double A has not yet been notified. So if you
Sir.
see 16 to double A, which talks of that you will be getting credit only once it gets reflected in your credit ledger, that has yet not been notified.
सर क्रेडिट लेजर में तो रिफ्लेक्ट हो ही रहा है ना जब उन्हें रिटर्न
क्रेडिट लेजर में तो इन एनी केस रिफ्लेक्ट हो रहा है, पर वहां पेमेंट ऑफ टैक्सेस की बात की गई है। हाँ, बट वो भी अभी नोटिफाई नहीं हुआ है।
लेकिन संदीप, read 16(2). It
Sir,
says, notwithstanding anything contained in this section, the registered taxpayer shall not be entitled to credit. Well, he cannot even take a credit. He lock is satisfied. Where is the question of his claim being correct?
Sushil
If
sir, आप
but
section
this question-
41
but
पढ़े
this-
थे सर।
This
41
question
पढ़े थे।
has been raised later on by the security officer.
sir.
But
Puneet
that
It was
doesn't
not
matter.
it was not at the time of making credit in the books of accounts.
Yes, Puneet ji, your point.
This,
Your-
ये
this
सारी
issue has come
कंडीशंस
later
जो
on.
हैं, ये सारी
See,
कंडीशंस
take another angle. If the credit was not available to you, you did not satisfy 16(2), then in 16(4) you were supposed to reverse.
It was very much available to me, but it has been disputed by the proper officer and when he was doing
Actually, sir,
security
लेकिन
at
जब
this stage.
जब आपने एनुअल रिटर्न फाइल की, उसमें जो कंडीशन सेटिस्फाई नहीं हुई, वो आपको देखो उसने रिटर्न में पेमेंट नहीं की, तो
Sir,
16(4) में आपको रिवर्स करना था इसको।
Sir, it can be prior to annual statement also.
Sir, एक मिनट.
This proceedings can start anytime. It is not the question of necessarily after the filing of the annual return.
Gupta ji, let's have the views of Puneet, please. Puneet ji.
हाँ जी।
सर, ये
Sir.
जितनी भी कंडीशन सेक्शन 16 में लिखी हुई हैं, ये कोई साइमल्टेनियस कंडीशंस या प्रिलिमिनरी कंडीशंस नहीं है। दे आर टू बी फाइनली सेटिस्फाइड। दिस इज क्लियर फ्रॉम रीडिंग ऑफ सेक्शन 41, जो आपको इमीडिएटली ऑन रिसीट ऑफ इनवॉइस ही आपको क्रेडिट लेना अलाउ कर देता है।
Yes.
तो अगर हम इसको टोटालिटी में देखें तो मेरे ख्याल से थोड़ा सा डिफरेंट व्यू निकल सकता है, लेकिन इसके अंदर एक ही कॉम्प्लिकेशन आएगी कि अगर उसने अगर टैक्स पेमेंट नहीं करी और आपने अगर उसको पेमेंट कर दी, तो आपके एंड पे कहीं भी किसी भी स्टेज में रिवर्सल वाला प्रोविजन नहीं था। और ऐसे में अगर उसने यानी सप्लायर ने अगर आपके कहने पे टैक्स जमा कर दिया और जिस दिन आपका क्लेम एडजुडिकेट हो रहा है उससे पहले कर दिया, तो मुझे तो कहीं कोई लीगल दिक्कत नहीं दिखती, नंबर 1। नंबर 2, मैं आपका ध्यान महालक्ष्मी कॉटन के जजमेंट के ऊपर ले जाना चाहूंगा, बॉम्बे हाई कोर्ट। उसमें अगर आप बहुत ध्यान से देखें तो उन्होंने क्या बेसिस के ऊपर अपहोल्ड किया था कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल वायरीज की, अगर सप्लायर ने दिया तो बायर को नहीं मिलेगा। वो ये था कि गवर्नमेंट ने एक अंडरटेकिंग दी थी कि हम पूरी चेन में सिर्फ एक बार कलेक्ट करेंगे, और अगर एक बार कलेक्ट कर दिया तो उस केस में बायर्स को जो क्रेडिट डिनाई किया हम उन्हें ऑटोमेटिकली रिफंड देंगे। तो ऐसे में अब हम उसको इफ वी टर्न इट ऑन इट्स हेड एंड से कि टैक्स देने के बाद भी क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा, तो इससे ज्यादा अनकॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल प्रोविजन कोई हो ही नहीं सकता। देन व्हाट वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट इज sheer arbitrariness, which I don't think is permitted by the Constitution of our nation.
Exactly, sir. Please, sir. Very right. Your
Right.
opinion is very right.
Right. In fact, this question had come in the chat box also, that if the supplier pays the tax, whether the person who is the receiver of the goods and he also pays the tax, whether he will get refund of that. Puneet ji, in fact,
Indeed, that is answered squarely by Mahalakshmi Cotton. That has to be done.
Puneet ji, but there is no
difficult. Yes, sorry. आप question complete करें.
sorry, Puneet ji, actually there is no specific provision under the act to get that refund.
That is what I was saying. कि when the provisions of law with certain conditions are being imposed into the law, and assuming that they took clue from Bombay High Court decision to continue keeping it, even despite the Delhi High Court being affirmed by Supreme Court, they forget that even the Bombay High Court has very categorically put certain conditions for upholding the varies. The difficulty with those who are into the drafting or those who are involved in giving those minor details, and that has been the biggest problem of GST, is that though they have tried to somewhere plug the loopholes too much, in fact, it is like almost at every place you will find that they are killing flies and mosquitoes using tanks, which was not required at all. And there is too much discussion of morality. But at the same time, अगर कहीं कुछ सही किया भी था, तो कहीं भी उसको undo करने के लिए कोई चीज नहीं दी है। और प्रोविजन सेइंग कि अगले सितंबर तक आप क्रेडिट ले लेना, 180 दिन में पेमेंट कर देना, these are all devoid of the basic reality at the ground. और अगर आप कोविड के समय पे देखेंगे तो लोगों ने 2-2 साल में पेमेंट करी है. So on the one hand, you collect tax on the basis of invoice, and on the other, you say if you don't pay, you will not get the credit. These are all these show that you are blowing hot and cold together in the same statute. So there is definitely some problem with the statute itself. And सुशील सर ने बड़ी अच्छी बात कही कि हाईकोर्ट तक नहीं मिलेगा. ये एक बड़ी कटु सत्य है. मतलब मैं कहूंगा कि ये बहुत बड़ा कटु सत्य है कि आप ट्राइब्यूनल 4 साल में नहीं बना पाए. आई थिंक इससे बड़ी कोई बात ही नहीं हो सकती. और उसके बाद आपको हर केस में अगर हाईकोर्ट जाना है, दिस इज द बिगेस्ट पेन पॉइंट. और अगर आप जीएसटी के कारण देखेंगे, मेरे पास ऐसे बहुत से लोग आए जहां मैंने ये देखा कि छोटे लोग जो हैं, दे आर आउट ऑफ बिजनेसेस, दे आर अनेबल टू डू बिजनेस बिकॉज आप रिफंड देते नहीं हो. आपने सारे परचेजेस को टैक्स पेमेंट के बेस पे कर दिया, फॉर्म्स को खत्म कर दिया, वर्किंग कैपिटल रिक्वायरमेंट बढ़ गई और प्रोसीजर्स प्रॉपर है नहीं. आप मनमाफिक कह देते हो कि सप्लायर ने टैक्स जमा भी किया तो कह देते हो उसने जमा नहीं किया या उसके पीछे वाले ने जमा नहीं किया. ये भी पॉइंट रेज हुआ इस डिस्कशन में. तो ये तो एक फैंसीफुल हो गया. मतलब आप बिजनेस कैसे करोगे फिर? बिजनेस को कुछ एल्बो के लिए स्पेस चाहिए. यू हैव टू गिव स्पेस टू देम टू कैरी आउट. अब आपको ए से बी से सी से वापस ए आना भी बुरा लग रहा है. So to what extent you will go and to what extent a businessman is expected to work? Things have become very hazy. अगर एक अच्छी ट्राइब्यूनल होती जैसे सी स्टार्ट थी, मतलब आई हैव सीन द वर्किंग ऑफ सी स्टार्ट, अगर वैसी कोई ट्राइब्यूनल या हरियाणा टैक्स ट्रिब्यूनल इन द लास्ट डेज, अगर ऐसी कोई ट्राइब्यूनल अगर एक राइट अर्नेस्ट में इस्टेब्लिश करी जाती तो मुझे लगता है कि बहुत सारी प्रॉब्लम सॉल्व हो सकती थी. बट देयर इज रियली अ पुल एंड पुश एट द सेम टाइम. मतलब उसको कहते हैं ना, मारे भी और रोने भी ना दें. इट्स सच लाइक अ सिचुएशन फॉर द बिजनेसमैन. इट्स रियली डिफिकल्ट.
Now, Sandeep, there's another angle. This match of 2A 2B जो भी आप रिटर्नों का मैच करते हैं, where the supplier doesn't file the return, you can't even take input as credit today. So I think the concept of eligible credit is linked with this section 54. Notwithstanding what Puneet says about the deficiencies in law, we can't do anything. As lawyers, we have to interpret what is given to us. So if we accept this theory, he makes payment after 2 years, and I claim input as credit, I have not claimed. क्योंकि उसने सप्लायर ने रिटर्न ही नहीं भरी, मैं क्लेम दे ही नहीं सकता. Then what will happen in those situations? I don't think we can get away with the concept of eligible input as credit in this things of GST as they are drafted. Of course, full marks to Puneet to say these words, and which we have been saying, that GST is at crossroads. It's in final death knell. More litigation, more problems. All 7 controversial issues are in high courts, and Supreme Court doesn't say anything.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
I think we have had a long discussion on ITC. We now need to touch the aspect of refund. भाटिया साहब, रिफंड के बारे में 2 मिनट के लिए, 2-4 मिनट के लिए जो भी आप कहना चाहोगे, इश्यूज जो हैं आपके माइंड में, if you can just share with our audience. Then I'll go to some questions.
I think refund is, for that matter, in any taxing statute, refund is a very integral part of it. It is the lifeline of any taxing statute. The way the government wants to collect its taxes, I think they should be equally liberal when it comes to giving back the undue tax which they have collected. So giving back of taxes, or what we call as refund, is equally important in any taxing statute. As far as refund in GST is concerned, it has not been conferred upon a person as a matter of right. Refund is a very, very restrictive, only very restrictive cases refund has been permitted in GST. There are few cases where refund has been permitted. One we all know is zero rated supplies, that is supplies in cases of exports and supplies to a SEZ unit or an SEZ developer. That is one instance where refund has been permitted. The second instance is excess payment of taxes where we can claim cash refund. And thirdly is cases of inverted duty structure where the rate of tax on inputs is higher than the rate of tax on the output supplies. In those cases, a refund has been permitted. Barring these cases, refund has not been permitted in any other circumstances. So if I say, for example, I'm closing down my business and at the time of closure, I sell my entire stock at a loss, and due to which the credit gets accumulated. I don't think so. We'll have to really fight it out. The law does not provide for claiming of refund in such cases. So it is not that if I have got a credit or if I've got excess credit, maybe due to accumulation of stock and I want to claim a refund of that, that is not permitted in GST. Whereas in earlier laws, in VAT regime, the input tax credit, it was your option whether you want to claim refund or you want to use it for making payment of taxes. That option was available. In GST, that option has not been made available. They say we'll grant you refund of your input tax credit only in these restrictive circumstances. Remaining circumstances, refund will not be granted. Theoretically, yes, there is a complete mechanism in place for grant of refund. It is all time bound, but as the important word over here is theoretically, as rightly pointed out by Puneet ji, I think what is killing this legislation is not its drafting. Drafting may be one part of it. It is not as badly drafted as a law, but the executives are the one who are really instrumental in killing this law. In my opinion, most of the amendments which have been brought and the issues relating to ITC could have been plugged had the GSTR 2 and GSTR 3 returns, which were originally conceptualized by the legislature, would have come into place. And I personally feel that taking umbrage of technical problem is that this cannot be implemented and you take the shelter of technical problem in this, that would be asking too much. So in my opinion, half of the problems could have been solved there itself. As the remaining part also, the law is being administered more through notifications and circulars and more through executive directions. So that part needs to be taken care of. The earlier it is taken care of, better part it would be. So refund, theoretically, yes, there is a mechanism in place. You have to apply for refund. You get the refund in time. The rest all is procedural part as far as refund is concerned.
Thank you so much, Vineet ji. Mr. Puneet Agarwal has to actually leave at 12:30, so we'll take the benefit of his presence for another 10 minutes. Puneet ji, I'll go to you for the question on refund. Sir, COVID के टाइम पर लास्ट ईयर मार्च में सुप्रीम कोर्ट had come out with an order कि जितने भी अपील्स फाइलिंग है, अथॉरिटीज के आगे भी एप्लीकेशंस हैं या कोई भी टाइम जहां पर प्रिस्क्राइब्ड है, that time is being extended to, initially it was extended up to I think July, thereafter it was extended, further extended, then in March we came out with the Supreme Court came out with an order कि वो अब खत्म कर रहे हैं हम सारे को, and then unfortunately the COVID situation had again worsened and then again it has been extended. Now my question is this कि under refund explanation जो है वो 2 साल का time provide करती है for filing of application in section 54 depending upon the relevant date for different types of reasons or different types of refunds. क्या वो 2 साल का टाइम जो है सुप्रीम कोर्ट के उस ऑर्डर की वजह से एक्सटेंड हो जाएगा क्या? Lot of people are getting their applications rejected actually for 2 years, being beyond 2 years.
संदीप जी, मेरे सामने एग्जैक्टली वो ऑर्डर नहीं है, बट अगर आप उसको ध्यान से देखें तो उसमें वर्ड लिखा हुआ है all the limitations for judicial and quasi-judicial proceedings.
Right.
So process of refund undoubtedly is a quasi-judicial proceeding. So I think मुझे कोई doubt नहीं लगता इसमें कि they are all covered by the order of the Supreme Court, which has gone to the extent of saying कि whether it is a special statute or a general statute and whether extendable or not, in all cases they have extended the limitations. So I think it should be covered within the purview of.
तो क्या वो जो पीरियड है वो क्वासी जुडिशियल अथॉरिटीज के ऊपर जो दिल्ली हाई कोर्ट की जजमेंट आई थी कि 15 दिन में डेफिशिएंसी मेमो इशू करना है, तो क्या वहां पर भी लागू हो जाएगी? They can also issue this deficiency memo after a long time.
सारे अगर आप बहुत ध्यान से देखें, एक डिबेट वैसे कुछ लोग कर रहे हैं ऐसा कि वो जो एक्सटेंशंस हैं दे आर ओनली फॉर द एसएससी एंड नॉट फॉर अथॉरिटी, बट उसको देख के एटलीस्ट मेरे को तो ऐसा नहीं लगा कि वो इट इज वन साइडेड. उसको पढ़ के ऐसा ही लगता है कि इट इज अ जनरल एक्सटेंशन इन ऑल लिमिटेशंस. तो और अगर उसका एक्चुअली संदीप जी होना भी यही चाहिए. अगर आप ध्यान से देखें कि जो जुडिशियल और क्वाज़ी जुडिशियल लिमिटेशंस जो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने एक पैराग्राफ में एक्सटेंड करी हैं, अगर उसके अलावा उसको आप सामने रखें और इस तरफ देखें कि टैक्स लॉज जो है वो जीएसटी हो या इनकम टैक्स हो, उसमें किस तरीके से एक्सटेंशन हुई है. तो notification after circular, then some press release and something, it has completely messed up. It's all a very selective kind of an extension. कि ऐसा हुआ तो कर दिया वैसा. So what is happening is that there is a lot of doubt in the minds of taxpayers, especially because of the curfews and lockdowns. People were unable to really take care of, and the deadly second wave, the people were having genuine difficulties in making their compliances. So now having extremely selective means, I would say pick and choose. कभी इसको बढ़ा दिया, कभी उसको बढ़ा दिया, थोड़ा सा बढ़ा दिया, किसी को ज्यादा बढ़ा दिया. It's all कुछ legislative fiat type का कुछ हो रहा है. It should be general and understandable. Sometimes there is lot of power in simplicity. I will end at that.
No, Sandeep, you know, if you see the original order of 21st March of 2020, they extended limitation from 15th March. So if your limitation expired before 15th March, Supreme Court is not available to you.
Yes, of course.
In that order, they said for the purpose of filing appeals, petition, applications, and other proceedings. When in March, 8th March, they ended that order, and again they revived, they reinstated the original order. And then what Puneet said, they added the word to all authorities, state or center, special statutes, central statutes. So therefore, not only the original order of Supreme Court under Article 142 was continued, but in the new order, they gave it a different dimension. But the same dimension was there in the earlier order also. So that is very futile to ask, कि revenue को नहीं मिलता. No, it can't be one way. I agree with Puneet. It's not a one-way traffic.
एक्चुअली क्या ये रेवेन्यू ने खुद ही इस सारी प्रॉब्लम को राइज कराया है, क्योंकि उन्होंने खुद नोटिफिकेशंस और एक्ट्स कमेंट कर दिया है. And they, despite Supreme Court order, they themselves are saying our limitation for issuance of notice would be up to so and so date. So they can't really take.
नहीं, ये भी जो उनके लिमिटेशन उन्होंने बाद में एक्सटेंड किए है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट का ऑर्डर 3 दिन पहले ही हुआ था, तो नोटिफिकेशन बनाने में 15 दिन लग जाते हैं.
That despite Supreme Court order, all these central government authorities and state government authorities, they themselves have amended the acts. We have seen the acts coming, ordinances coming, the notifications coming, extending the limitation. So they themselves have curtailed that period of that benefit to them, according to me. I may be wrong.
No, but I think if there is a delay, they should be controlled.
Like to say, Sandeep ji.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When you see the earlier order of 23rd March 2020, the
Yes,
very
sir.
first order which the Supreme Court gave, extending the limitation for various certain purposes.
Ji.
I'm not recollecting the name of one judgment. Verma ji would come and picture over here. That a case under the criminal code before the magistrate went on, and the Supreme Court opined with respect to the default bail, because the charge sheet was not filed within the limitation period of 60 days or 90 days, whatever the time period with respect to that offense was concerned.
Yes.
Aki.
So they took the
Aki was not pending.
Yeah, they took the plea since the Supreme Court has passed the order. So that limitation gets extended to us. So 60 days would not apply or 90 days would not apply. So long as the order of the Supreme Court continues, we
Yes.
can file a charge sheet. But Supreme Court itself clarified,
Yes.
you will not get the extension. Of course, that's a judicial proceeding. I can't say that it's a quasi-judicial proceeding. But filing of charge sheet, Supreme Court has categorically denied the benefit of that order to the prosecution. So that is a distinction. But now, when the subsequent order came
Yes.
on 27th of April 2021, this question, this issue was raised by the Additional Solicitor General, by the Solicitor General, I think, Mr. Tushar Mehta, and he said that he made a prayer to the Supreme Court that let all proceedings, whether judicial or quasi-judicial proceedings, they should also be extended, they should also be taken care of, because if COVID has affected the general public, it has also affected the revenue, the departmental officers. And Supreme Court then said, after modifying its order of 8th March 2021, that look, yes, it will apply to quasi-judicial as well as judicial proceedings. So that limitation, which was extended for all purposes, for limitation for appeal, application, revision, etc., they would equally apply for quasi-judicial proceeding.
Yes.
But would it apply retrospectively, or would it apply only after 27th April, which limitation is falling? That may again be a question which need to be clarified by the Supreme Court.
जी, एक सर क्वेश्चन आया है which is also very interesting.
Nishti, one thing I would like to add over here.
जी भाटिया जी,
You see, the only, I think the whole panel is of the view that in nutshell, yes, the limitation period, if it falls after 15th March, gets extended. If it was expiring prior to 15th March, you will not be getting the benefit of this order. From the second issue which Jain sir has raised, that why this order dated 27th of April, whether it would apply even in respect of the earlier orders. To some extent, the court has already said that the period from 15th March 2020 to 14th March 2021 would be excluded while computing the period of limitation. So that period in any case gets excluded. The problem would arise after 14th March 2021. But one problem over here is the unfortunate part, which you had rightly pointed out, that the government has come out with notifications extending period of limitations which are not in conformity with the Supreme Court order. Now, there was the original notification was notification number 14 of 2021, where they extended the period for all kinds of things, all kinds of compliances to be made under the Act. And in that case, they extended up to 30th of May, which was subsequently amended by notification number 24 of 2021, and it was extended till 30th of June 2021. So till 30th of June, they have extended, but that was only in respect of those cases which were falling after 15th of April 2021. So here now, on one hand, we have a Supreme Court order, which is an omnibus order. And on the other hand, we have a specific notification of the government, which says that if your limitation was falling after 15th April, it stands extended to 30th of June. Now, there is a conflict between these two orders, one of the order of the Supreme Court and the notification. So this notification is not in conformity with the Supreme Court order. Although Puneet was a privy to it, we were a privy to it, that in the case of Anil Kumar Goyal, the solicitor ASG made a remark that we will issue instructions in accordance with the Supreme Court order. We will issue notifications in accordance with Supreme Court order. I think, Puneetji, that was what was being stated by ASG.
Vinitji, let's not get into it, because anyways, there has been a lot of controversy on that point.
Okay, no, I'm not on that issue at all. I'm not getting into the controversy.
Because this was the exact controversy, which later was stated that we never stated it.
Acha. Okay. Chalo. Be that as it may be, we'll not get into it. But what I'm trying to say is, even otherwise, the Supreme Court has categorically stated that this order is an order under Article 141. So once it is an order under Article 141, even if they would have not come out with this notification number 14 or 21, despite that limitation period would have got extended. So my view is, yes, limitation period is still available if it fell after 15th March 2020.
I fully agree with Vineet. Once you reinstate the original order 15 March 20, that order was reinstated. There is no question of interpretation here, whatever Attorney General might say. The word used is reinstated. I have gone through the meaning of the reinstate means restoring to its original level. So original order plus this one paragraph they added here. So from 15th March 20 till 14th March 21, or even now, plus 90 days were extra given by Supreme Court. So I don't think there is any problem. So if your refund application had not become time barred up to 15th March 20, it became time barred on 16th March 20, you can still file refund application and nobody on the earth can say that this is time barred.
Right, sir.
Simply impose a judgment of the court, a right is Article 141, Article 142 to give substantial justice. If you don't, it's a contempt, and it will be a contempt if they don't follow.
So there's a consensus on this issue amongst the panelists that yes, this Supreme Court order would be available for 2 years relevant date for the purpose of filing of refund. I'll next go to Jain Saab, Rajesh Jain ji. This is pertaining to the show cause notice. See what is happening. Lot of lawyers are facing difficulty. Lot of tax consultants, chartered accountants. So what is happening? A person is receiving the notice. A person say he's in Punjab at Ludhiana. He is receiving the notice from tax departments of another state, say Rajasthan. He receives a notice that you have availed a wrong ITC. So you kindly come present and summon is issued to him under Section 70. Of course, he can issue. There is no difficulty over that. As a witness, he can summon it. Now, if he goes there, he is being pressurized to reverse the ITC which he has availed, though the Rajasthan authority has no connection whatsoever with the Punjab dealer. So whether it's a central authority in Rajasthan or whether it's a state authority in the Rajasthan GST Act, what they are calling people, they are pressurizing them, or they are going to the extent of harassing them and detaining in the sense they are prolonging their witness over there. So people are facing difficulty in that respect, and sitting in Rajasthan, they are being forced to reverse the ITC, which is being claimed on the purchases made from Rajasthan dealers. So how far that is correct, and how far that that threat which is given by them for attachment of bank account, ITC blockage by using their extraterritorial powers is justified, and how do we guide our clients about that? I think this is a question coming from the tax consultant, sir.
Well, I think let us divide this question into two, three.
Right, sir.
First is the summoning of the person from Punjab and Rajasthan.
Right, sir.
So I understand that Rajasthan authorities, whether they are state authorities or whether they are authorities under the Central Act, they are conducting some inquiry of a dealer who is based in Rajasthan.
Yes.
So he might have issued the summons under Section 70, and on investigation being carried out in his case, they came to know that he has made sales to the parties or purchases from the parties in Punjab, whatever may be the case. And in that context, they want the presence of the Punjab dealer over there in Rajasthan. To that extent, what you say that as a witness, I can understand that the authority can summon him as a witness. So he can be summoned for the purpose of inquiry of a dealer who is based in Rajasthan. That is one thing. There is no issue with respect to that limited issue of summoning as a witness. The next question comes as to whether he can also ask, sitting in Rajasthan, that you reverse your input tax credit to the dealer in Punjab. Now, so far as state authorities are concerned, they do not have the power, they do not have any extraterritorial jurisdiction over the dealer in Punjab. But yes, under the Central Act, if such an action or a show cause notice is issued by the DGGI, that can make a difference because they have pan-India jurisdiction. So they can also issue, and this has been happening day in and day out. People in Delhi are getting notices from DGGI, whether in Ludhiana, whether in Meerut, whether in Bombay, somewhere in other parts of the country, and they have been summoned and they have also been issued the notices. So limited to the DGGI, where they have pan-India jurisdiction, even the central tax officer based in other state cannot give a notice to the dealer of the other state asking either to reverse or, for that matter, a show cause notice under Section 73 or a show cause notice under Section 74. We must understand that the board has issued a circular. We all will recall that a circular was issued in February 2018. And for the purpose of Section 73, quoting the references of subsections where the proper officer is appearing, the powers have been given. But those proper officers can only be those one who exercise jurisdiction over you. So it can be my commissioner in Punjab who exercises jurisdiction over me, or Rajasthan commissioner exercising jurisdiction over the Rajasthan dealer. He can give a show cause notice to him. He can deny the benefit of the credit which has been availed by him, or he can ask him for the short payment of duty or tax or non-payment of tax or erroneous refund, whatever be the case. But definitely he cannot exercise any control over a dealer who does not fall within this jurisdiction. So he has to be a proper officer for the purpose of the dealer who is based in Punjab. He cannot exercise. Yes, exception is only if he is a DGGI officer. Then he can definitely do. Otherwise he cannot. And so far as blocking of or saying that you attaching the property, that is what we know and we understand under Section 83, which is provisional attachment. See, provisional attachment is basically not a recovery process, because it is only during the pendency of certain proceedings as of now. Even that will continue if the amendment gets notified, although it has not been notified so far. But during the pendency of proceedings under Section 67, let us not go into 62, 63, 64. It is 67, 73 or 74 when the proceedings are pending. So 67 is basically search and seizure. 73 is basically determination of tax without allegation of fraud and suppression, etc. and 74 is where the suppression or concealment of fraud is involved. In those cases where the proceedings get initiated and they remain pending, those powers can be exercised of provisional attachment. But then those proceedings can also be undertaken by the proper officer, that is the commissioner, jurisdictional commissioner, not anybody who does not exercise jurisdiction. Even that commissioner who can delegate his power under section 5(3), he can only delegate his power to the officers which are within his jurisdiction. He cannot say, Rajasthan commissioner cannot say to the Punjab commissioner or the joint commissioner in Punjab that you go and attach the bank account of the buyer. In any case, that is not permissible, because it is only the property of the taxable person which is going to be attached. So taxable person in his jurisdiction is the dealer in Rajasthan. Punjab dealer is not the taxable person so far as he is concerned. And that is what Bombay High Court, if we all recall, that of Cash Impacts judgment, where a person was called as a witness and he was summoned under section 70. Of course, he was not issued any summon or any notice under or proceeding under 67 against him. The Bombay High Court has taken the view, no, you cannot attach the property of that person who has been summoned as a witness. So I think this categorically settles that Rajasthan Commissioner does not exercise any jurisdiction to either attach the bank account or to issue any proceeding for reversal of credit or any proceeding under 73 or 74 of a Punjab dealer.
तो इसका नतीजा ये है कि वो सम्मन तो कर सकता है राजस्थान का जो ऑफिसर है, but वो उनको फोर्स नहीं कर सकता. So there is no threat that he can take any coercive steps. Of course, he can always get in touch with the local authorities over here and he can share that information. That
he cannot initiate any inquiry against the dealer in Punjab.
That's right.
There is another angle to it.
Sir, Verma sir.
See, there is a judgment yesterday by Gujarat High Court. I got it yesterday, in which I can read 4 lines for all of us. It may not be on what Rajesh is talking, it's not the same lines. Of course, they deal with DGTI. They interpreted section 2, subsection 91, what is the meaning of proper officer, read with section 5(2) of CGST Act, dealing with powers of officers. Last para they write, the lawyer appears to have misread the powers of the board to assign the officers to perform the function as proper officer. Once the board assigns any officer of Central Act to work as a proper officer, then he gets all the powers of a proper officer in relation to the various sections of CGST Act as the delegation of powers by the commissioner to the other authority or the officer as contemplated in section 167 of CGST Act. The court, therefore, does not find any substance in submission of the lawyer, the respondent number 3, was not proper officer. Because CGST Act applies to extend to the entire India. Except the state officer will have this jurisdictional issues, what Rajesh is talking. But once, there are 2 kinds of appointment. One is commissioner delegates, where board appoints officers. Once, under section 2, subsection 91, dealing with definition of proper officer, board tells Sandeep Baul to be the proper officer for this function. Then the Gujarat High Court says that they will become proper officer for all the sections of CGST Act. It's a new development. Full judgment is not there. It's only a head note which I have got, but full head note is enough. So when we talk of a Bombay High Court judgment or the earlier judgments, again I repeat, the scheme of GST Act, we still have to continue to learn. The definitions are creating a lot of problems. Like this 291 definition, I read it today morning, I got it today morning. So I came a little late because I was in office working on the judgment. Proper officer defined, but they say not only by the commissioner, by the board also. So the DGTI officers are not a part of CGST Act. They are appointed by board, they have the superpower pan India. But CGST also Act in the preamble says it extends to all India. So it will take time before we say they cannot attach your property, section 83 order, they cannot pass. I only agree with Rajesh if my property is in Delhi. And there has to be attachment. It's simply not an order. There has to be machinery of Delhi to attach it. So that is a part of procedure. What he says is correct. इनको लिखें, पर उनको power है. उनको बोल सकते हैं कि आप attach करिए. Attachment through Delhi jurisdiction हो वो एक अलग issue है. That is completely administrative in nature. But in my view, in view of the recent Gujarat High Court order passed yesterday, it was argued by Khaitan and Company Rastogi. So they have dismissed writ petition holding that they are proper officers for the purpose of Section 167, and they have all the powers given to proper officers. This is the additional angle I want to take.
That argument probably based upon the judgment of Supreme Court in Canon Industries.
Absolutely. No. In Canon India, so they said what should be done must be as per law. They did not dispute that. But why Gujarat High Court said they are doing as per law only.
What Abhishek Rastogi has relied upon is the judgment of Canon Industry, which has not found favor with the.
बिल्कुल ठीक है, बिल्कुल. लेकिन हाई कोर्ट ने उसको माना कि जजमेंट कहती है. But he misread this section 291. We all lawyers, we can misread. No lawyer is ever perfect in life.
I think a lot of issues are going to arise on jurisdictional aspects also. Later on, these will all be thrashed out.
मैं आपको एक पेनेशिया दूं.
जी.
एक सलाह दूं. रोज 1 घंटा फोन पे राजेश से बात कर लो. या तो तुम्हारा पूरा दिमाग खराब हो जाएगा और जहां बिल्कुल आप सीधे लाइन पे आना शुरू हो गए. I have learned a lot of law from Rajesh. I'll openly admit. So we do have discussion almost 1 or 2 hours a day.
We all have. Vineet ji,
अभी तेरे से भी होने वाली है. मुझे टाइम नहीं मिल रहा है अभी थोड़ा.
जी.
Okay, next question. Sorry. Jokes apart.
Sorry, Vineet ji, you would like to add few words to this?
No, personally, like you see, jurisdiction is a very, very litigative, is going to be a very, very litigative area in GST, and it's undoubtedly a very gray area. But personally, I feel I am more inclined on the view which Mr. Jain Sahab has taken, for a simple reason that if the GST law is interpreted in such a manner that anybody can have jurisdiction over anybody all across the country merely because it's a central legislation, then there is going to be anarchy. An officer or a commissioner sitting over here in Delhi, if he comes to know that somebody in Bombay or somebody in Chennai is evading taxes, so he will start issuing summons to him or he will start issuing notices to him.
यही हो रहा है.
No, but that is not permissible. That will ultimately not be permissible in law. For the purpose of investigation, I have the right to send him a notice under Section 70. But when it comes to issuance of show cause notice, even for DGGI, the power is given only to issue show cause notice on a pan-India basis. They have not been granted power to adjudicate on pan-India basis. So adjudication, even on pan-India basis, has not been permitted even to DGGI.
Absolutely.
प्लीज ये प्रॉब्लम ये है कि शो काज नोटिस जब आ जाए फिर तो कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. शो काज नोटिस से पहले जो प्रोसीडिंग्स है ना वो ज्यादा तंग कर रही है लोगों को.
बिल्कुल कर रही है, बिल्कुल कर रही है.
किसी भी केस में
सर देखिए, उसमें मैं थोड़ा सा राजेश जैन जी के व्यू से एग्री करता हूं कि जहां पर आपको सेक्शन 70 का सम्मन इश्यू हो रहा है, लेकिन उसके लिए प्री कंडीशन ये होनी चाहिए कि ही शुड बी इन्वेस्टिगेटिंग समबडी विद इन हिज ओन डोमेन व्हिच इज इन हिज टेरिटोरियल जुरिसडिक्शन. और अगर आप नोटिफिकेशन नंबर 2 देखें जो जुरिसडिक्शन डिफाइन करता है, नोटिफिकेशन नंबर 2 ऑफ 2017, वहां पर हर एक कमिश्नर को जुरिसडिक्शन पिन कोड वाइज दी गई है. तो इट हैज बीन स्पेसिफिकली मेंशन्ड इन द डेलीगेशन नोटिफिकेशन दैट
गुजरात हाई कोर्ट ने विनीत उसी को इंटरप्रेट किया. 1 जुलाई 2017 के नोटिफिकेशन को ही उन्होंने इंटरप्रेट किया गुजरात हाई कोर्ट ने.
Sir, this Gujarat High Court judgment is in relation to a DGFT matter. Actually, this matter is whether for a DGFT proceeding they would qualify as a proper officer over here or not. So this is on a different tangent. But yes, I agree with you that this is going to be a highly debatable issue in times to come. My view is that if he is investigating a person who falls within his jurisdiction, and in connection with that investigation, he wants to summon a person, then he can summon anybody who is even outside his territorial jurisdiction. But simpliciter, he cannot simply issue summons to anybody just like that.
right. So we have to guide our clients accordingly. I'll go to next question. Probably that should be the last question for today. I think we have almost reached the ending time. I'll go to Jain Sahab for this again. Jain Sahab, the question is that my client has purchased goods in May 19 and has fulfilled all the conditions of Section 16, right? But from August 20, that's about one year and 3 months later on, 2020, department has cancelled its seller registration due to being non-existent. Can the department issue me a notice under Section 74(1) of CGST if seller clears all compliances in year 1920? So they mean to say that 1920 he was there there is no doubt that he was not in existence, but subsequently he has been found non-existent later on, and his registration is cancelled. So can 74(1) notice be issued to me for this purpose?
See, there are two things which we need to understand. You have said that his registration certificate has been cancelled.
Subsequently, yes.
Maybe subsequently, but you have not stated whether that registration certificate has been cancelled retrospectively or prospectively, because that would make a mark of difference.
Yes, so it has not been done retrospectively, it is prospectively from
Well,
August.
if it is done prospectively and he has entered all his transactions in books of account, and you have also qualified all the conditions under section 16(2), that notwithstanding his cancellation of a registration certificate, you cannot be deprived of the input tax credit which you have availed. To my understanding, even the show cause notice under section 74 may not be maintainable, because what fault has been committed by you, it has not been pointed out. Today they say that the dealer who has supplied the goods or given the services, he is non-existent, and that is why his registration certificate has been cancelled prospectively. In that situation, like we say that if a boy is born or a child is born, until unless he is declared dead, he is alive. So that position would apply to the supplier so long as his registration certificate is not cancelled. His transactions would stand valid. But yes, there is one thing. When this issue of cancellation of registration certificate has been raised, we need to consider the provision under section 29, which gives the power to the authorities to cancel the registration certificate retrospectively. Now, this has huge implication. Huge implication in the sense that today what we have been witnessing and seeing all across the country, that registration certificates of dealers are cancelled retrospectively. And what impact it brings or ramification it brings to the entire chain of transactions, whether supplies or whether receipts to him, is that section 16 comes into play. Because it is only the registered persons who can come into the play or playing area of taking or giving the input tax credit. Yes, till particular time he was a registered dealer, but the situation has altogether changed drastically. Now his registration certificate has been cancelled retrospectively. So this question under the GST regime has not been decided by any high court, because it is a violation of Article 19(1)(g). It takes away not only his right, but the right of the recipient also, because whatever he has claimed as an input tax credit would also be vanished. It will get evaporated. So this question would have to be seen. And before the GST regime, there were provisions under the acts, VAT acts, where the registration certificate could be cancelled from a specified date or a date specified in the show cause notice. Now, authorities used to give the date retrospectively, that from this date we are cancelling your registration certificate. And such like matters have also come before the courts. I remember Delhi High Court in the case of Chhabra Electric, which is reported in 30 STC, page 85.
36.
There, the matter was under Bengal Finance Sales Tax Act and the rules made thereunder. Now, that registration certificate was cancelled, and it was cancelled retrospectively. And when the question came up before the High Court as to whether it can be cancelled retrospectively, the law does not say retrospectively in explicit term, but now it says in GST. So High Court says it would not go retrospectively. You cannot cancel it retrospectively. From the specified date means either the date when you cancel the registration certificate or the date when it gets notified, the cancellation gets notified. So it will be always prospective, but the situation has changed. Altogether, the situation has changed. Now, whether this would withstand the judicial scrutiny or not, if the matter is taken up before the High Court, to my understanding, this is a grave danger. Grave danger to the people who have taken the input tax credit under a bona fide belief that the dealer was existing, they were making the payment. Everything has been done according to law, but now they are exposed. The roof has gone. Sandeep ji, unmute yourself.
Right, sir. Sorry. Sir, there is a question on transfer of business. I'll go to Vineet ji. Vineet ji, there is a question that Mr. A and B are partner in the firm. Suppose A dies and his son enters into partnership. According to Supreme Court judgment, the firm stands dissolved on the death of a partner, whether after dissolution a new firm has come into existence and requires new PAN and new registration. So what are your views on that? I hope the question is clear.
Yes, I have understood the question. You see, in my opinion, this new firm, on the death of that person, which will come into existence, will be an altogether different new firm. It will have a new PAN number, and GST being a PAN-based registration, they will have to apply for a separate registration. But at the same time, the law permits that if you want to take over that business as a running concern, you can take over that business as a running concern without any GST liability. I think a business transfer agreement will have to be drafted, or even without an agreement, you can take over that business as a running concern, and there is a complete mechanism in place by way of which the existing input tax credit of that existing firm will get transferred to this new firm by way of ITC 02. So that mechanism will have to be followed, and the new firm can take over. The only condition is it should be taken over as a running firm with all the liabilities, not just the assets part of it. The existing liabilities of the erstwhile firm will also have to be taken over by the new firm.
Very right, sir.
No, Sandeep, there's a little question on this particular issue.
Sir.
See, Section 42 Partnership Act deals with this.
Right.
In Partnership Act, we all know, unless something is in the contrary in the Partnership Act, if partnership had 3 partners, 1 dies, partnership firm continues. In 2, there is a judgment of Supreme Court Muhammad Liaquddin versus Kanadia Devi Mishra, where they said the firm stand dissolved. If firm stand dissolved, it cannot be taken over because the firm doesn't exist. So either the partnership has to be determined, asset liability participated, or whatever they do. But the question is, one partner dies, son takes over. The partnership firm doesn't exist anymore. So like when he said, necessarily there has to be a PAN number. Regarding your earlier question, myself and Rajesh have been discussing this at length. I'll take 2 minutes on this issue. See, again, go back to Chunilal Prashadilal. They say what you can see, whether the item was covered or form is genuine, unless there was a fraud, collusion, etc., etc. So even if your certificate of registration is cancelled now, for the past transactions, if they examine there was a collusion, or what we have been discussing, circular trading, there are problems. If you see the cancellation part, Section 29, subsection 2, it has 5 reasons to cancel the RC. And 2 of those are very serious. If you contravene any provisions of the Act, or there was a fraud when you took the registration. Now, notwithstanding whether certificate of registration is cancelled retrospectively or not, the transactions conducted even prior to cancellation come in jeopardy. They can be looked into. So unless the transactions were bona fide, that is the theory of Gerumal and Arise, the transactions were never doubted by the lower authorities. There were no findings. So unless the transactions were bona fide, even if your RC is cancelled now, notwithstanding Supreme Court's race trading versus Maharashtra, State of Maharashtra with this race trading, notwithstanding the judgment on cancellation of C forms, I think in GST mechanism, these transactions can be looked into to invoke 73, 74, Advir 132, even at a later stage. That is why in 132, they use the word whosoever. Whereas in other cases, they use the word registered taxpayer. In a coercive section like 132, they use the word whosoever. So the cancellation, like Rajesh said, in this we can handle, but it is retrospective. And in Delhi, I can tell you, they have issued more than 7,000 retrospective cancellation orders. And none of them has filed an appeal so far. Now, one more tangent. Rajesh, is for you also, because we are working on this issue. Now, supposing my RC was cancelled on first, Vineet, for you also, for 1st March, it was put on the portal. So I have a 60 days limitation to file appeal, or condonation 1 month. Now I don't file appeal for 1 year. Now what happens? My RC is cancelled retrospectively. it is not appealed by the person whose RC is cancelled, and the collateral transaction done with the recipients are affected. But here there is a one little solution in 107. When you file appeal, it says any person aggrieved. You need not be a registered dealer or registered taxpayer to file appeal. So can we get the appeal filed by recipients, make this cancelled taxpayer as a pro forma party, and then they take this issue further? Otherwise, all rights go. If it's time barred, it's time barred. So that's another tangent to that particular question of cancellation. And it is very dear to Rajesh Jain, because yesterday also he was telling me that we have to work on this issue. People will suffer. And
I think there is one very old judgment of Calcutta in this issue. Over there, the issue was exactly similar to this only.
that's Section
The
20,
issue
Anil
was-
Kumar and Company. Anil Kumar and Company.
No, Hindustan Motors.
Okay.
Over there, the issue was that some person had made supplies to Hindustan Motors,
Mhm.
and Hindustan Motors, that other person's registration got cancelled, and he was not able to procure C forms from the department.
Hmm.
So his cancellation was challenged by Hindustan Motors
Oh, yes,
on the
yes,
ground
yes.
that we need C forms and we are the ultimate sufferers. So we should be allowed to file an appeal to challenge his registration. So there it was negated, but that was in the sales tax regime, and over here we need to see whether. But then,
Yes. No, we can file appeal here. Any person. I have gone through
but
it.
then limitation will be applicable to that other person also.
वो तो मैं बोल मेरे को आज पता चला मेरे पोर्टल पे थोड़ा आया था वो डेटा नॉलेज होगा ना उससे तो anyway that's an issue, that's a
Right, sir.
point where we
I
can
think-
do some kind of legal entanglement in this.
I think we are running out of time now. We have had a very good, healthy, long discussion on various topics. I'm sure all the members have taken a lot of inputs from our panelists, who are the gems of Delhi High Court, I would say, and they have been the leading lights.